Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say a word also on behalf of treating the people of DC as worthy of this investment, which of course they are. And this investment is an investment in everybody because we need to move to an electric fleet in order to reduce the calamitous consequences of the carbon emissions that are wrecking our climate system with unprecedented forest fires in the West, unprecedented drought in the Midwest, incredible flooding on the East Coast, a climate system that has been completely destabilized. And we've got to get serious about this and again, remove it from the realm of just, partisan football. I assume Congresswoman Norton is showing her general good manners, but I think that we should be outraged on her part that anyone would use this as an opportunity to take a shot at the people of Washington, D.C., who are asking for nothing more than what the people of the rest of the country have, which is statehood, political equality, and the ability to govern themselves and to be represented on an equal basis in the U.S. Senate and in the U.S. House. So if their budget goes down, I hear some of my colleagues say they don't deserve statehood because they can't manage it. If their budget goes up and they've got a big surplus because they're well managed, then they say, well, let's not treat them equally and make federal investments in the people of DC. Stop treating them like strangers to American democracy. That's 713,000 tax-paying, draftable American citizens, many thousands of them we've seen in this committee through testimony, have served the country in every war that America's ever had, going back to the American Revolution. And I think any of us, I know I certainly would take umbrage if people disrespected my constituents in that way. So I think that we should absolutely reject this amendment, and we should expect that all Americans will be treated fairly. I also want to take the opportunity, Madam Chair, just to defend myself for a moment. I think a couple of my colleagues invoked the role that I had in the not botched, but successful, the most successful bipartisan impeachment of a president of the United States in American history. There have been 4 presidential impeachments, one of Andrew Johnson, for alleged violation of the Tenure in Office Act, one of Bill Clinton for lying about sex, the first one of Donald Trump for the Ukraine shakedown and trying to get President Zelensky, who was in town yesterday, to falsely claim that Joe Biden was under criminal investigation in Ukraine. And the final one, and the most bipartisan impeachment, was of Donald Trump for inciting a violent insurrection against the Congress of the United States and against Vice President Pence, whose name was chanted repeatedly by hundreds or thousands of people saying, hang Mike Pence, hang Mike Pence. And we demonstrated overwhelmingly and conclusively that Donald Trump incited that violent insurrection with his calls to stop the steal and go and fight like hell or you won't have a country anymore, and so on. And I defend myself in some detail, Madam Chair, just because I've noticed that over the last few days, the terrorist insurrectionists, and here I'm using the terminology of the police officers who fought them for 5 or 6 hours, and these officers, more than 140 of them, ended up wounded and injured, including loss of fingers, eyes gouged, traumatic brain injury, and so on. The terrorist insurrectionists who attacked us have been praising the Taliban. The very people who some of our colleagues are saying should come back to Washington and who are claiming are political prisoners are out there celebrating the victory of the Taliban. And of course, it makes sense because they are equally opposed to women's reproductive freedom. They are equally opposed to gay rights. And they view this as some kind of great victory against the United States government, the same people who attacked us on January 6th. So I am very proud of the role I got to play in the impeachment of the first American president to incite a violent insurrection against his own government. And I'm also very proud to stand up against religious fanaticism and terrorism all over the world, whether it's in Afghanistan or whether it comes to our own doorstep. I yield back to you, Madam Chair.
It's back. Who else seeks recognition? Mr. Keller, you are now recognized. Mr. Keller.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I thank you for recognizing me. And I've been listening to the debate over this amendment, and I just think that when I looked at the bill, I didn't see that we were buying electric vehicles for any other state or any other city in the country. So I think this, we talk about equity and we talk about all those other things on the other side of the aisle. I would just think that Washington, D.C. should be treated just like any other political subdivision, any other state. We're not buying electric vehicles for Philadelphia. We're not buying them for Pittsburgh. We're not buying them for Sunbury, Pennsylvania, or Williamsport, where my constituents are. I don't think we should be buying them for any one city. So I would make that point, and I yield back. Thanks.
The gentleman yields back. Who else seeks recognition? The gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Biggs, is now recognized for 5 minutes. Mr. Biggs.
Move to strike the last word.
Okay, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, I hesitate here because I don't want to take the bait of my colleague from Maryland, but he raised so many issues that I think are so wrong, obviously. I remember not too long ago having a committee hearing, I thought he might have been there, where the director of the FBI came in. And I've been critical of the director of the FBI from time to time, but he was asked a couple of pointed questions. Number one, was this an insurrection? And he said, no, this was not what I don't want to say, because I can't give you the quote, I'm going to paraphrase. He said, I have to use legal terms, and this does not qualify as an insurrection. When he talked about the people who were there on January 6th, he said there were three types of people there. There was the biggest, by far the biggest crowd were peaceful but rowdy. The second group were people who had technical violations. They entered places they shouldn't have been. And that was a much, much smaller group. And many of them have been arrested for technical violations, trespass, et cetera. And then the third thing would be, you actually had a small group of people that were violent and rioting, and ultimately many of them have been arrested. So, and then nobody on our side of the aisle has ever said they shouldn't have been, that they should have been there. That indeed, if you were violent, et cetera, and you're violating the laws, you have to suffer the consequences of violating those laws. That's what we have said. The FBI recently put out a report saying, apparently, that they didn't find collusion or a big insurrection, an organized insurrection, the way that my colleague has just characterized it. I will let him go on because he's part of the group of my colleagues across the aisle who, even after the Mueller report came out, still insist on some kind of Russian hoax, and that's a problem. But back to the Sessions Amendment, I think Mr. Keller made the wise point. If you're going to claim that this is all to be done in equity, then you would be wanting to spend money on every community in the country to provide them with electric vehicles. And of course, somebody would, at least, and it'd be me and others, I would hope, would say, we simply can't afford that, nor can we afford this. And Madam Chair, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. Who else seeks recognition? The question now occurs on the amendment offered by the gentleman. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed
Aye.
say no. No.
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it, and the amendment is not adopted.
Madam Chairman, I'd ask for a recorded vote.
A recorded vote has been requested. A recorded vote is so ordered and pursuant to Clause 2 of Rules 11, Committee Rule 5B. Proceedings on the amendment are postponed. Okay, who now seeks recognition?